Always split, weren't you, between this sense of austerity, political austerity, you know, leftist solidarity, yes, and this more luxurious, more effete way of looking at the world.
Well, you put it very well, but remember for me, my life experience had been that the affectation of austerity was the thing of the right wing, of the very sort of almost Calvinist, military, civil service, middle class that I was from, where
interesting,
frugality was, you know, an ethos. I mean, I identified it with a very conservative worldview. For me, pushing the boat out a bit, with perhaps the odd peaches and cream and
so
brandy and champagne,
was
really more like moving to the left.
So you could reconcile the peaches and
cream.
Don't
you think that's ingenious? By
that is so ingenious. Now, you got out of that one beautifully.
I think Oscar himself could have.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Wilde did used to say things like that, because he was actually a very serious socialist, but he certainly had champagne tastes. And I think he used to say, you know, languidly sipping from a flute, nothing's too good for the working class. That sort of thing.
Yes. One of the hallmarks of your writing style is a quality of being emphatic. You are a bad boy of journalism, as they say. You are an agent provocateur. And yet I found one of the most interesting and not quite as lucid as your usual writing in your book was the chapter about changing one's mind.
Yes.
I found that a very fascinating and not Hitchens-like chapter or portion of a chapter, where you talk about how mind changing happens gradually. And it seemed to me that you were really speaking about the need or the possibility in you for ambiguity or tentativeness or uncertainty. And I wonder if, I mean, I felt this was very genuine, what you were writing there, but I wonder if you ever feel that this philosophy and your style are at odds with each other.
A little bit, yes. And thank you, by the way, for noticing that, because it's very important to me. I also argue that it's not always a question of your changing your mind. I think very often your mind changes you. You suddenly realize that without having intended to think something, or while intending to think something, you can't quite do it anymore. It doesn't mean the same to you as it used to.
Yeah.
And you wonder why. And if you want to take an honest exploration of why that is, it may lead you in some alarming but fruitful directions. That's actually why I called the book Hitch 22, because it's a minor key echo of the great Joe Heller's paradox, but in a lifetime that's had quite a lot of commitment in it and allegiance. I've now reached a point where I'm mainly associated with a group of people who I suppose could be described as adamant for skepticism, or resolved for uncertainty, or certain only of the principle of uncertainty, so to say. And you know who I'm talking about, Richard Dawkins and others with whom I'm very, very flatteringly associated. Long may this overpraise continue. And this pits us, of course, against. It's not as soft a position as it might look. It pits us against the people who are completely sure they have all the answers, the modern totalitarians, the ones who have all the information they need, and who indeed have the truth because it's been revealed to them. They're already qualified to tell us what to do. Opposition to that lot is the cause of my life, and always has been in a way. And opposition to all forms of totalitarianism, not just as the system of thought, but in the mind.
But do you ever feel that you're expected to be extreme, and that sometimes you just would like to be not extreme? I mean, you see both sides, you perhaps see the other side, but you see this side, but that's really not your persona in the media.
I don't know about extreme. Of course, it's very hard for me to guess how I'm viewed, but I suppose probably not as a centrist, no. But that's different from being an extremist. Anyway, no, I never take. I know of myself that I never take a position for effect. I don't do that.
Well, I want to talk about your friendships. You know, this has been, I guess you've been asked this question too many times about your male friendships. Your friendship with Martin Amis, whom you seem to adore, the son of the great and inimitable Kingsley Amis, whom you also knew and liked, at least before the end of his life. And then James Fenton, the poet. Others, you mentioned you had a Friday, when you were in London, you used to have a Friday meeting of these people and sort of imitate the Algonquin Round Table.
No, not consciously.
Not consciously?
No.
I thought some of
No.
the limericks and some of the witticisms sounded to me a little bit as though you were very consciously involved in trying to do
Look,
Dorothy Parker.
One can't be unaware of the existence of things like that. But where we were meeting was actually in Bloomsbury. So the thing we had to particularly pretend not to be emulating
I see.
was the Bloomsburys. And I
So
really,
you were
I really
emulating.
don't think we were much like them.
No, I don't think so either. I think there
Actually, at
was
the time, it didn't seem like a set at all. It does now. And it's been enshrined now in lots of books and memoirs, and it's become quasi-legendary. But then it really was a pretty much informal Friday lunch get-together that would often go on until it got dark.
And now you still have periodic meetings of some of those people in New York. Is that right?
Or London, or anywhere where we can meet.
Okay. Now, the point there, though, is that there are so few women in that circle. And, I guess...
None, to be exact.
None.
To get that
And
right.
in academic parlance, we would call this an expression of homosocial bonding to the nth degree.
Sounds all right.
I wonder, what do you make of that? It's peculiar. As a woman looking at it, I
Yes.
would have liked to be part, but I realize I would have no role.
There was no prohibition. It wasn't an all-male club. Sometimes women, I remember Julie Kavanagh came. I think Tina Brown may have come a couple of times as well. But none of them really wanted to come regularly. Without anything being said, it was a male bonding
You think
event.
it was the kind of humor, the kind of talk that was involved, that was of a certain sort of...
No. If you mean the rude limericks and so
Yes.
forth. No, because women are very good at that, and also find it fantastically funny.
Not
and
the
also,
women I
also
know.
very often men try much harder if there are women there.
Ah, that's
very
true.
often the real vice I find of closed male clubs and similar societies is that they're almost certain to degenerate into tedium, because without the spur of womanhood, a lot of people don't perform very well.
So how come this did work without women?
Whereas in the evenings, say, I mean, there was, Julian, if we all met at Kingsley's house, there would be girls. Tammers and Day-Lewis, I remember.
Do you think,
the sister of.
are there
and,
ways in which
Pat,
women...
Pat Kavanagh, the great literary agent, who was...
But as you said yourself,
Mrs. Julian Barnes.
they were not usually there, and they were sort of on the periphery.
Not
So-
at this squalid kebab house. No,
So
they weren't.
what is the appeal? What is the nature of this all-male camaraderie? I mean, that it wasn't just happenstance.
It was not much more than that. Again, if we'd sat down and said this is a boys' lunch, no, that would have been something something doomed about that. I feel it just happened to be that way.
You don't think
And
there's...
there are forms of friendship that can only occur between men.
Okay, well, that's the question.
Yeah.
What is that? Can you explain a little more?
If I ask myself, say, with Martin, who's my most adored friend, every man should have somebody who knows his whole story. I mean, without being told, or having to be told next time they meet. I mean, he knows your backstory. He's been through it all with you, hashed it over the next day, perhaps, been there when it was whatever it was happening. Don't need to speak of it. You know, it's just a whole layer there. You can't. It's very hard to have that kind of platonic, shall we say, friendship with a female. It just is. I think I have the impression that for women that's more or less the same. That their confidants don't tend to be men.
Well, I'll have to think about that. But I think it's different.
Or
Yeah.
not always. This wouldn't always work either. Or not heterosexual men.
Okay.
A lot of women have gay male confidants.
Okay.
A lot of my female friends do that. But it would tend to be another girl who knew all your innermost.
Okay. Now, the distinction you draw between the, heterosexual and the homosexual, you do describe in your book a number of homosexual experiences that you've had throughout your life, and yet you hold strongly to the line that you are heterosexual. And I wonder about that, why you feel the need to have that category even.
No, I hold strongly to the line, which is really my reason for putting it in the book. Because I did wonder whether I wanted to or should. was noted. The whole is to point out that in almost every heterosexual man I've ever met, there's quite a lot of the gay. And I thought it might be worth saying this and reminding people of it at a time when homosexuality is still being attacked as an illness or a crime or disorder, that if more heterosexual men would admit that they knew more about it than they let on.
Okay. You have a very moving section at the end of your book about your children. And you speak, it's as much regret, I think, as expression of love in terms of what perhaps you hadn't done or
Yes.
might have done as a father. What kind of reaction did they have to that? I found it one of the most moving sections of the book.
I don't know, and I wonder if I'll ever find out.
Have you asked them?
No, certainly not.
Why not?
Well, it would be too much of a leading question. Hey, have you got to the bit about you yet? I wouldn't do that. I made sure they all saw it early on, but I haven't had any feedback. Actually, my children don't tend to read my stuff.
Oh, mine don't either. But that's the reason why you ought to discuss it with them, so they don't miss it.
It's there for them to come across one day. I don't need them to read it now, but I wanted to get it down. They might read it after I'm gone.
That's true. Anyway, we're out of time for this section,
don't say.
unfortunately. But we'll be back, and I want to thank you, Christopher Hitchens, for this interview.
Thank you so far.
And thank you for joining us today at the Drexel interview.